Today, we're going to dive deep into one of the most pivotal events in all of human history, but we're going to look at it from a really unique angle. This is a medical and historical investigation of the cross, based on the analysis of Dr. Mark Snyder. Just to put the scale of this into perspective, listen to what historian Martin Hengel had to say about it. No human death has influenced and shaped the world more than that of the Galilean craftsman, crucified before the gates of Jerusalem. I mean, that is a staggering claim, right? We're talking about a single event, a single death, whose ripples are still shaping our world 2,000 years later. And that really brings us to the core question we're tackling today. Look, the Roman Empire crucified thousands upon thousands of people. It was a tool they used. So why this one? Why has this specific death endured for 2 millennia when all the others are forgotten? What made it so different? Well, to find out, we have to start with the punishment itself. To really get this story, first we have to understand the punishment. So let's pull back the curtain and look at the brutal, unvarnished reality of what a Roman crucifixion actually was. Now get this. This quote isn't from a victim or a critic of Rome. It's from the Roman statesman Cicero. He called crucifixion a most cruel and disgusting punishment, and even said, "There is no fitting word that can possibly describe so horrible a deed." So just think about that. Even for the Romans, the people who perfected it, this was the absolute peak of state-sponsored terror and public humiliation. And here's the thing, the Romans didn't even invent it. They just perfected it. They engineered it. You can see its brutal history here, starting way back with the Persians, picked up by Alexander the Great, used by the Carthaginians, and then the Romans took it and turned it into an absolute instrument of state terror. Okay, so we've got the history down. Now we have to move into the medical reality. And I'll be honest, this gets pretty harrowing. Let's walk through a step-by-step chronology of the suffering, all based on the medical analysis in our source material. So the ordeal didn't actually start at the cross. It began with the scourging. And this was the tool they used, the flagrum. And let's be clear, this wasn't just a whip. This thing was a weapon, and it was designed to do one thing: shred human flesh. It had multiple leather thongs embedded with sharp bits of bone and metal balls, and it was meant to tear a person's back right down to the muscle. And the effects? They were utterly devastating. Even though it was legally capped at 39 lashes, that was enough to cause massive blood loss and deep lacerations. The source material notes that many victims would go into something called hypovolemic shock. That's a dangerously low blood volume before they even got to the cross. And here's the key takeaway. The scourging was deliberately designed to start the process of death long before the main event. So after the scourging came the nailing. Now, you know the popular image we all have, the paintings and movies, it's always nails through the palms of the hands. But the source explains that just wouldn't work. The hands couldn't support the body's weight. So instead, the nail was driven through the wrist, right between the 2 bones of the forearm, the radius and the ulnar. And you can see here just how devastating that placement really was. The nail would either crush or just completely sever the median nerve. This is the largest nerve that runs to your hand. We're talking about a kind of excruciating, white-hot, searing pain that would just shoot up the arms. It was anatomically precise torture. And this leads to what the source identifies as the central, agonizing mechanic of dying on a cross. It's all about breathing, but it's completely backward. See, as the body slumps down with gravity, the chest is constricted, and that actually makes breathing in pretty easy, almost passive. But to breathe out, to exhale, the victim had to do a conscious, deliberate, and unbelievably painful act. Push up on their nailed feet and pull up on their nailed wrists, just to get a single breath out. Every single breath was a choice to reignite all of that pain. So what ultimately kills a person on a cross? Well, it's not just one thing. It's a slow, agonizing cascade of total system failure. The medical analysis says it's a combination of that severe blood loss from the scourging, something called exhaustion asphyxia, which literally means suffocating because you're too exhausted to keep pushing up to breathe, and eventually congestive heart failure. Okay, so we've established the horrifying medical mechanics of how a person dies on a cross. But this is where the analysis takes a really sharp turn. The source we're looking at argues that this specific death was different, and it raises a fascinating question. Could it have actually been voluntary? And the foundation for this whole argument comes from passages just like this one, from the Gospel of John. This is Jesus quoted as saying, "No one takes my life from me,
but I lay it down of my own accord. Now that suggests an element of control, of intent, that you just don't see in a typical execution.
And this idea is reinforced by theologians like John Stott, who put it this way: what dominated his mind was not the living, but the giving of his life. The focus here completely shifts, right? It's no longer just about a man being killed, it's about a man actively giving his life as a conscious sacrifice.
But okay, that's the theology. How does this connect back to the medical evidence? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. The source argues that the ability to actually cry out from the cross, especially that final loud shout that's reported in the Gospels, is physiologically almost impossible. For typical victim dying of exhaustion, asphyxia, mustering the breath and strength for a loud cry would be unthinkable. So the source presents this as potential evidence of a unique, almost supernatural level of control over the very process of death. And all of this brings us to the climax of the story. And we're going to focus on the one person there who would have known a crucifixion better than anyone. The professional, the Roman centurion who was in charge of the whole execution. I mean, think about it. This is a hardened Roman soldier, a professional executioner. He had probably overseen countless deaths just like this. And yet, his reaction, as recorded here in Matthew's Gospel, is just profound. It says he and his men were terrified, and he exclaimed, "Surely he was the Son of God." So what on earth could a man like that have seen that would provoke a reaction like that? Well, the source argues that what just astounded the centurion came down to three things. First, that this death seemed to happen just as it was foretold. Second, that it seemed voluntary, as if the victim literally chose the moment to die. And third, it was sudden. Death came way faster than was typical, and it happened without the need for what was called crucifixion. That's the brutal practice of breaking a victim's legs with a club to speed up their suffocation.
And then there's one last piece of, you could almost call it forensic evidence. A spear was thrust into his side, and it released a flow of blood and water. The source interprets this as a kind of battlefield autopsy. That water is identified as pericardial effusion. It's a clear fluid that builds up in the sac around the heart during congestive heart failure. To the soldiers, this was proof positive that he was already dead. All of this leads to the really powerful conclusion framed by the historian Will Durant. Caesar and Christ met in the arena, and Christ had won. It's just a stark contrast, isn't it? The ultimate power of the Roman state, represented by the cross, and the incredible enduring impact of its victim. So where does that leave us? What are we looking at here? A unique, documented medical event? The fulfillment of ancient prophecy? Or a story so powerful that it literally changed the course of human history? The source we've examined today makes the bold argument that it wasn't one or the other. It was, in fact, all three. And that, right there, is the enduring mystery and the undeniable power of the cross.